Hello, welcome back to the Jet Press Podcast. My name is Justin Freed, and I'm joined as always by my dear friend, Mike Luciano. Mike, how you doing, man? What's going on?
I'm feeling good because I've graduated from my man to my dear friend, so I gotta feel good about that, man.
Yeah, I just I want to change it up a little bit this time. I'm feeling good this morning because I woke up and I saw what honestly might be the most badass video that I've ever seen with Michael Clemens. I don't know what to say about that dude. He's going to be a star on Hard Knocks when that happens. But yeah, we got a great show planned. We got, talking plenty of Denzel Mims stuff. Of course, the recent news that came out today that the Jets plan to waive Denzel Mims. We'll get into that. Quinnen Williams stuff that has happened since the last time we recorded, which was honestly about 5-6 days ago now, but Quinnen Williams was extended. We're talking position battles. We're talking maybe some overrated, underrated Jets. We'll get into it. But first, Mike, you got some promo stuff to deal with.
Yes, from our good friends over at DraftKings. So Jets fans, have you signed up for DraftKings yet? Because if you're a new user, you can receive $150 in bonus bets instantly after following just these 3 simple steps right here. All you got to do is create an account, make a deposit, and then wager $5 on any sport. Doesn't matter if your first wager wins or loses, you'll still receive $150 in bonus bets. All you got to do is use the code FSBETS, that is FSBETS, when you sign up. Using the code not only gets you the bonus, but it supports the podcast. So if you consider signing up for DraftKings, use that code FSBETS, FSBETS, to maximize your first bets. This offer is available for new customers who are 21 and over and physically present in legal gambling states. Please remember to always gamble responsibly. Check the episode description on YouTube for the full terms of the offer. And before we jump into all that stuff, you can also find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, wherever it may be that you get your podcasts. We are on all those spots. We're also on YouTube at the Jet Press. That's where the whole back catalog of episodes are. That's where the YouTube shorts are, the interviews. All of it's in that one big mega epicenter. So let's jump right into the craziness this week, starting with a move that was a matter of when, not if. And it finally officially happened after the writing had been on the wall for honestly close to a year. Denzel Mims finally is going to have his Jets career cut short. Brian Costello, among many others, now reporting that the Jets are going to try to trade Denzel Mims. And if they do not find a trade partner, he will be waived. And that is the end of Denzel Mims. And it's a little bit melancholy because, number one, it's just melancholy if you're want to maximize just the amount of value you could have got from him, because they had opportunities to trade him in the past for probably more than they're going to get now in any hypothetical deal. Never really did it. So now it's just maybe they'll get a conditional pick in the 7th from a team that doesn't want him to go to waivers. That's pretty much all you're going to end up getting for Denzel Mims. But I'm trying to remember, just looking back to when Denzel Mims got drafted, because it's always like hindsight's always 2020 with the draft. Zach Wilson has kind of been the biggest picture of that, where suddenly everybody knew Zach Wilson would be bad except for the Jets. But I remember thinking back to when the Jets got him at the end of the 2nd round, I believe after a trade up. And I remember everybody, to a man, was saying this is one of the best steals in the entire draft, because he was like a fringe first round guy. He was getting tons of first round hype. And then all of a sudden he just turned to dust. He was no more. Which is just because he seemed like he checked all the boxes. He was big, he was strong, he made a ton of really good highlight reel catches at Baylor, and he ran a really good 40-yard dash, because his big question was his speed. And then that all gets solved. So you're like, oh, Denzel Mims is just going to come right in and be an immediate force for the New York Jets. And then what do you know? The exact opposite happens, and it's just another 2nd-round Jets wide receiver to throw on the pile. It's Stephen Hill. You know what? Stephen Hill, I don't even want to slander him. You look at the numbers, Stephen Hill was probably a better pick than Denzel Mims, which is really saying something.
Dude, I don't know if you saw my Twitter. I tweeted that exact thing out earlier today. I said it's crazy that Stephen Hill had a more successful Jets career than Denzel Mims. That is wild. But yeah, you're totally right about the 2nd-round wide receiver bust. The Jets have now drafted 4 wide receivers in the 2nd round in the last 11 years. None of them have made it to the end of their rookie contracts. That's for a 2nd-round pick. They've all been gone after 3 years. That's crazy.
And a lot of them don't even stay in the league. They just play 2 years for the Jets, and that's it.
Stephen Hill never played another game for another team after the Jets. Devin Smith did have that weird resurgence with the Cowboys, but he didn't do anything of note after the Jets. We'll see what happens with Elijah Moore in Cleveland. And unless Denzel Mims can really turn it around, I'm not sure he's going to have much of a career post Jets. But yeah, it's discouraging because there was a lot of optimism around Mims, not only when the Jets drafted him, but even after that rookie season. Because it's easy to forget, but when the Jets drafted Denzel Mims second round 2020, there was a lot of people who thought he was a first round prospect. And when Jets got him in the end of the second round, that was seen as like one of the steals of the draft. It was a huge deal when they got him, especially because the Jets traded down to get him. Everyone wanted the Jets to draft Denzel Mims earlier in the second round. They traded down. Fans are like, oh no, they're going to miss out on Mims. They still get Mims. Everyone's like, oh, Joe Douglas is this, this great GM. We're not going to get into a Joe Douglas conversation.
Mackay and Denzel Mims. What a deal.
Ashton Davis, what a steal, man. What a round. What a draft.
Michael God, that's just a graveyard.
It's bad. That 2020 class is bad. But yeah, there was a ton of optimism. And of course, his career gets off to a rocky start. He missed a lot of training camp with a hamstring injury. He missed the first half of the season, unfortunately. And unfortunately, he kind of started behind the 8 ball as a result. But he returns, he comes back, and he has a pretty strong finish to his rookie season. So much so that the assumption is going into his second year, into 2021, that he's going to be wide receiver 2. That was the assumption that the Jets signed Corey Davis. They had Corey Davis. They drafted Elijah Moore. You had Jamison Crowder. But people really expected Mims to be wide receiver 2. And then he was, losing out snaps to Keelan Cole in the spring, and everyone's like, "What's going on here?" Unfortunately, he had that battle with food poisoning, and then he just kind of very quickly fell out of favor with the new coaching staff, and that was pretty much it. That was the last time, which was that 2021 offseason, that Jets fans kind of had any kind of real optimism about Denzel Mims, because since then it's just been healthy scratch after healthy scratch, just kind of fighting for a roster spot at the back end of that roster. And like you said, this was a long time coming. He requested a trade last summer, I should say. The Jets received offers for him, but the report at the time, I believe it was from Connor Hughes, was that the Jets were asking for a 4th round pick. That is, it's insane to think about. Even at the time, it seemed ridiculous. Now it seems even more ridiculous, especially because the fact is that they're probably not going to get anything for him. If they do get anything, maybe a 7th round, conditional 7th, maybe a pick swap, whatever it's going to be. Either way, they probably should have taken those offers at the time. Regardless, this is probably a best case scenario for Mims because I didn't think he was going to be on the week 1 roster. It seemed unlikely that he was going to have that roster spot, even if the Jets carried 6 wide receivers. So it's at least good that he's going to get a chance for a fresh start because, I see some people talking about this in chat. We can bring up one of these comments right here because it relates to what I'm talking about here. This is from Yemi Rotimi on YouTube. It says, sorry, man, fans love blaming the players for the lack of success, but truthfully, it sometimes can be attributed to bad coaching. And I absolutely think that there's something to that. I absolutely think that coaching played a role. I mean, his first couple of years or his first year in the NFL, he was playing with Adam Gase as his head coach, as his offensive play caller. He had really bad quarterback play with Sam Darnold. No doubt that his situation didn't help him. But at the same time, every time he was given an opportunity, he fell short. I think that can't be overlooked. One of the best things about Mims coming out of college was his hands, right? He was this dominant, jump ball receiver with 4.38 speed. He had all the physical tools, but for whatever reason, since his rookie season, he seemed checked out. He had issues with concentration drops. He had issues with route running. It seemed as though the coaching staff didn't trust him to run the offense. Like it seemed like it might have been a playbook issue as well. And so when you have all of that combined, I know it's easy to blame the coaching staff and it's easy to blame the supporting cast, and those definitely didn't help. But Mims fell short because of Mims, at the end of the day.
Well, one thing that I'll at least back up, I think what Yemi's trying to get at too is also that Robert Saleh and Mike LaFleur specifically did not do a good job maximizing Denzel Mims, which there's 2 sides to that. Number one being, well, I do think that they kind of messed him up in that they were very insistent that he needs to learn every single receiving spot. For some, like they said, like, oh, he's got to play X, he's got to play Z, he's got to move around a little bit, which it's jack of all trades, master of none. He could do a bunch of little things serviceably, and then what's his real role? He never really had a real role. I could see why if you're a Denzel Mims supporter that would really kind of get you riled up. But like Justin alluded to too, like sometimes, like I get the coaches are supposed to get the most out of their players. Sometimes players just aren't good. Like, are you really gonna go and rip Bill Belichick, who doesn't turn Bailey Zappi into a franchise quarterback? Some players just don't have, the whatever, the skills, the ability to put all the skills together to marry with what the coaching staff wants. I do think that he'll get another shot elsewhere. I don't think that it's going to be like a Stephen Hill thing where he just falls off the face of the earth and we have no proof of Stephen Hill. Stephen Hill even alive? Like we don't have any proof right now. I haven't seen a picture of Stephen Hill since he left the Jets. He could live next door to me, and I'd have no idea.
I hope Stephen Hill's having a great life.
I hope he is too, because I remember that first game with the Jets. I'm like, oh, Stephen Hill's going to be an amazing player, and then he was not.
So, Hill might have done more in that first game with the Jets than Mims did at any point in the
Oh, clearly. But also, like, if you're going to be let's just say you're another team, because I did see some rumors floating around out there that New England and Pittsburgh are kind of putting out feelers for Mims. Let's say you're Mike Tomlin. You could probably sell yourself on, all right, he's big, he's fast. In college, he had good hands. Maybe just going to New York out of being like a smaller town Texas guy and then going from there to Waco to New York. Like maybe that didn't really gel with him. I don't really know. That could be it, but some team's going to take another chance on Denzel Mims. It's just, I think the thing too that I also learned about him for the last couple of years, I think the speed, it looked more like 100-meter speed, I think. Where if you just ask Denzel Mims to like run in a straight line, he'd be pretty fast and he'd probably beat, 80% of the guys on the Jets. When you need him to get open against NFL level defensive backs, NFL level corners, he couldn't really do it.
Completely agreed with that. He had 4.38 speed at the combine, but on tape he doesn't look that fast, and in the NFL he doesn't look that fast either. He's got like that, like you said, that Robbie Anderson straight line speed. But when you're asking him to get a good release off or get separation, it's a little harder for him. And again, just I think so much of it was a mental thing, and I absolutely think that there's definitely something to the fact that he very quickly fell out of favor with the Jets coaching staff, and that definitely hurt his psyche. Like that absolutely hurt his psyche, and that's why I think he just needs a fresh start. And like you said, I think he will get that fresh start, whether it's a team claiming him off waivers, whether it's a team throwing a conditional 7th-round pick out there, because what do you have to lose if it's conditional? I do think that some team will give him another shot. He is very talented. We know that about Denzel Mims. He has all the physical talent to be an NFL wide receiver, to be a very good NFL player. It's just about putting it all together. And unfortunately, he's not necessarily old, but the time was ticking with the Jets because he is entering the last year of his rookie contract. And if he was only going to be wide receiver 6, and on top of that, they don't trust him to play special teams, which that's a huge thing. If he could play special teams, he would still be on the Jets roster right now. If the Jets trust him to play special teams, unfortunately,
he'd be an amazing gunner with that size and just the raw speed.
Yeah, for sure. And unfortunately, look, we're not in practice every day. We don't get to see the guy playing special teams. But clearly the Jets, Brant Boyer, don't trust him to play special teams. And that if that's the case with other teams as well, that is going to hurt his chances of sticking around with any other NFL team. So I think that has to be considered as well. 2
comments I want to get to in chat, one of which is kind of funny from Brian Sternbeck. I'm not 100% sure if this is verified, but it sounds like it's probably true. The Jets haven't had a 2nd-round pick made the Pro Bowl since Mark Gastineau.
Might be true.
That might be. I think so. Maybe there's one other guy who got one in like 1998 or something like that, but that might be true.
I'm looking right now. Yeah, David Harris never made a Pro Bowl.
David Harris never made a Pro Bowl?
No, I don't think he did. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Didn't make a Pro Bowl. Marcus May didn't. Yeah, I think that's true. I think that is true, that's crazy.
And then Yemi is back with more Denzel Mims talk, saying he did his rookie year. He had speed and he displayed it. He did. The rookie year, honestly, I thought was pretty good considering the circumstances. Bad quarterbacks, Adam Gase, team that was trying to lose to get Trevor Lawrence. The numbers don't blow you away. 23 catches for 357 yards, but that was in 9 games, and he had pretty much 40 yards a game. So obviously the potential is there. But also, these Jets teams, even though we had a fun run for last year, these were not good Jets teams, especially offensively in the last 2 years. And just my take on it is that Robert Saleh is not so stuck in his ways as a coach or so suicidal as a coach that he would see Denzel Mims as one of his best receiving options and then not put him out there because maybe he didn't like the guy or he didn't think he'd be a good fit. I feel like if Denzel Mims was showing enough, he would have been out there over guys like Jeff Smith, who got playing time over Denzel Mims. So it's a shame it had to end like this. I like Denzel Mims in college. I think he'll probably latch on. I think one more team will probably give him a shot at some point. But there was no way that he was ever going to be like a Pro Bowl or even a starter with the New York Jets. So
I think a big issue with Mims and that really that entire 2020 draft class is that draft class was drafted for a different coaching staff. I think that ultimately is what it comes down to. And it's not a surprise at all that very few of those guys, really none of them, have carved out actual roles with the team long term because of that. I mean, obviously, Mekhi Becton, it's not like necessarily a coaching staff thing per se. It's been more so injuries, although there have been some, some I guess, disagreements with the coaching staff. But it definitely was the case with Denzel Mims. And we've seen that with a lot of guys in that draft class. They were drafted for an Adam Gase coaching staff, unfortunately. They weren't drafted for a Robert Saleh coaching staff. So when Saleh's staff came in 2021, they had no allegiance to those 2020 guys. And Mims, I think, is the perfect example of that, where Mims kind of came into that spring, I think, expecting to be a starter, right? And this is not me blaming Denzel Mims like mentality or anything, but I think rightfully so. He came into that spring expecting to be a starter, and then quickly realized that, oh, this coaching staff has no ties to me. In fact, they went out and signed Keelan Cole. They drafted Elijah Moore. Those are their guys that they handpicked, right? So they might get preferential treatment, or they might get first crack at certain roles. And unfortunately, he had the food poisoning. I mean, the dude lost, I believe he's on record, he said he lost 20 pounds that summer.
Oh, what the hell? What did he eat? I want to know.
Salmon. It was bad salmon. He ate
bad salmon. Oh, he needs to come at my salmon. I legitimately have multiple salmon recipes that it'll satisfy him, and you know what? It won't give him a debilitating disease that'll impact his football career.
But honestly, that doesn't.
That's what he missed.
I feel like anybody named Luciano has to make good salmon. That makes sense to me.
Yeah, you'd think so, but I mean, let's look around the family. I don't know. I put my salmon up against anybody, so
fair enough. But yeah, that it sucks because I think he came into that spring and unfortunately was already behind the eight ball because it was a new coaching staff that didn't pick him. Then he had the food poisoning, and that was really the beginning of the end for him. So it's a shame. I do hope he gets another chance. I do think he will. Hopefully not with the Patriots. I'd rather him go. Let him go to the NFC. I saw the Cowboys might be interested in him. That'd be great. Send him to Dallas.
I feel like that's just because he's a Texas guy and the Texas guys want him.
Sure. Send him to Dallas. Hey, it's not the first Jets player that has requested a trade that has Cowboys rumors. So,
Yeah. Now, one guy that the Jets did draft and develop and retain long-term, finally, after a months of consternation, Quinnen Williams signs a 4-year deal worth just under $100 million, making him, I believe, if you take Aaron Donald out of it, because, again, Aaron Donald is a singular figure, the highest paid defensive tackle in the league. He got more money than Jeffrey Simmons, really good with the Titans, got more money than he got, and then Deron Payne in Washington. Quinnen Williams got more money than both of them, and a lot of it guaranteed, too. Shout out Nicole Lynch. She's been really good with getting a lot of guarantees up front, which NFL contracts should be fully guaranteed anyway. That's just the thing I've been on. Every other sport does it.
She's had a hell of an offseason, dude. Jalen Hurts, Quinnen Williams. She had a kid. Like, she's killing it. She's killing it.
Gee, talk about multitasking.
Yeah.
So this was a move that we had talked about for weeks and weeks and weeks of it was going to get done, but it was a lot. It reminded me of the Aaron Rodgers thing where even though it became very clear it was going to get done, just the months and the months of going on, and there's no deal. Like, these invasive thoughts start creeping into the back of your mind. I'm like, is it going to get done? Because seemingly, if both parties want to be here, why isn't it getting done kind of thing? But the Jets finally get Quinnen Williams locked up. This is a guy who just had as good a year as any defensive tackle in the league last year. And you know what? The Jets are thinking that he's going to sustain that production because a lot of ways they're structured down in the NFL, especially shorter deals I've noticed, is they get a lot of the money up front in the first year, which I kind of like because you're protecting yourself against injury. You're like, all right, no matter what happens, at least I got this amount of money from the contract first. Quinnen did not do that. His cap hits do go up with every other year. So he's going to play for just a $6 million cap hit this year. Then it scales to $20.4 million in 2024, and then 21.6, 26.6, and 30.4. So they are anticipating that the market's going to go up for defensive tackles. And I think one thing that Nicole Lynn did here that's really good, by spiking it in those next 2 years, I feel like that kind of guards against him doing another sort of holdout to renegotiate kind of thing. I think they kind of said, look, another defensive tackle is going to get signed soon and probably for more money than this. At least if we put this amount of money in the last 2 years, that way Quinn is not going to be like, well, why am I the 8th highest paid defensive tackle all of a sudden? It guards against that. So I'm thrilled for Quinnen. Happy he got his money, but I'm also happy because the Jets got their guy locked down. And we can mock Mike McCagnon all we want, but I mean, sometimes he made some good picks, and this was a good pick.
Yeah, I think this is the perfect example of a true win-win for both sides. Quinnen Williams got exactly what he wanted, pretty much. He wanted the 4-year contract instead of the 5 years. He got that. He wanted that shorter term deal. He wanted a chance to hit free agency again in his prime. He's going to get that opportunity. So that was huge. He got exactly what he wanted there. He also got the highest contract, or the largest contract in Jets history. He got to become the second highest paid defensive tackle in the NFL, behind Aaron Donald in terms of average annual value and total guarantees. Also, by the way, he did technically surpass Aaron Donald's total value.
Donald got 3 years, right?
Yeah, because Donald got 3 years. So Quinnen was 4 years, 96. Donald was 3 years, 95. So by 1 year, Quinnen is more.
Aaron Donald's so good.
I know he's insane. But I've looked it up too. It's not even the highest paid, the highest defensive tackle contract in terms of total value in NFL history. I believe that is still Albert Hainsworth.
Albert Hainsworth
got $100 million over.
Albert Hainsworth was just great. I mean, he had some issues off the field that played into that, but when he couldn't do the conditioning sprints and for Redskins practice, hey Albert, can you run from there to there? Nah, man. Nah, I can't do that.
That was the Tremaine Johnson before Tremaine Johnson's of free, even worse than Tremaine Johnson free agent signings.
It's like a campfire, even in other sports. You don't want that to be the Albert Hainsworth contract. Like nope. It's that bad.
Yeah, but yeah,
Quinnen is not Albert Hainsworth.
No, and I don't think he will be. And I know I've seen people be like, "Oh, it's the Muhammad Wilkerson because he's the first Jets player," which this is another crazy stat. The first Jets first-round pick to sign a multi-year extension to sign any extension, I believe, since Muhammad Wilkerson. They've only extended 2 guys that they've drafted since then, Brian Winters and Quincy Enunwa, I think.
Did Sheldon Richardson get extended and traded? Or
no, he didn't get extended.
He just got traded?
Got traded. It's in terms of multi-year extensions because, they brought back Nathan Shepard or whatever. But, like, multi-year extensions, I believe before Quinnen, it's just Brian Winters and Quincy Enunwa. And Enunwa played 1 game on that extension, I believe. So it has not been a positive history in terms of recent draft successes for the Jets. That's a fault of the entire Jets organization over the years. But yeah, I think it's a true win-win for the Jets. Honestly, there's not even a ton to say. The Jets locked up maybe their best player, one of the best defensive players in the NFL for the foreseeable future on a very reasonable contract. It is a reasonable contract.
It's kind of what we thought it would be.
It is. He deserves to be the second highest paid defensive tackle in the NFL. That's what he got. He wanted the 4 years. He got it. Sure. That's good for him. I'm glad he got that. It's a good deal all around. It's a good day for the Jets because we finally get to celebrate a star player that was drafted and developed by the team get extended. And that's a rare thing with the Jets. So I'm glad we get to celebrate that.
I mean, you literally have to go back like 10 years sometimes. And then, some teams, some franchises will extend like 1 guy from every draft class. That's how good they do. The Jets have like a handful in 10 years. Like it almost, you gotta kind of wrap your mind around that confidence.
Less than 3. They've had 2 since the 2012 draft class because Wilkerson was 2011, right? So they've had 2 since Wilkerson, and neither was a first-round pick. Both were mid-round picks, or one was a late-round pick. One was a 6th-round pick.
And I've brought this up before though with the Stephen Hill thing, but like think how many Jets picks get picked and then don't sign after that. Like remember Calvin Pryor?
Yep.
Like he leaves the Jets. That's it. D. Milliner. Like
there's a lot.
That's an even more damning indictment. Is nobody wants
both first-round picks. Those are both first-round picks.
Exactly. God, D. Milliner. Hey, at least this Bama guy worked out better than the other one. So moving on to our next segment because it is time to look at training camp officially.
Mm-hmm.
We're looking at training camp and we are looking at some of the bigger positional battles that are going on because this is where iron sharpens iron. This is where all these little mini battles.
Hunter Hughes is going to come for you because you just said iron sharpens iron.
Oh, is that a running gag on this?
That's like his big thing. He hates that.
Oh, he hates that. That's a pretty common saying. I don't know, but is iron not sharpen iron in real life?
It's overused. That's what it is. It's overused.
Oh, it's overused. Okay. Well, you the other day said this isn't the end; it's the beginning. So.
Man, I love cliches because if cliches are cliche because they're true most of the time. That's why they're cliche. Yeah.
All right, here's a cliche. There's going to be some positional battles at Jets training camp. One of which I actually have my eye on because there's a lot of uncertainty surrounding the wide receiver room and how it's really going to shake out. Because I think the only real evident truth there is that the number 1 guy is going to be Garrett Wilson.
Mm.
Now I think the number 2 guy is going to be Alan Lazard, but with Corey Davis around, I would have cut Corey Davis. And I like Corey Davis as a player. He just owed a lot of money. I felt like that money could have been allocated to a couple better sources, for lack of a better word. Even his ceiling, like what he was with the Titans, like I don't know if that's honestly worth the price tag that they gave him. But Corey Davis is still around. The coaching staff loves him. Otherwise, they wouldn't have kept him for that price. So that to me thinks that he's going to have some sort of role. I don't know what it is, but something. Obviously, you got Mecole Hardman in there too, who I'm honestly higher on Mecole Hardman than everybody else, and I'll happily be fine with Mecole Hardman being higher on Mecole Hardman than everybody else. I thought that he was banged up a lot in Kansas City. Like obviously, Patrick Mahomes is going to inflate your numbers, but the speed is very real. I thought they could have used him in a little bit of a better way. Not to say Andy Reid doesn't know what he's doing. That is far from the truth. I just thought that Mecole Hardman kind of got shortchanged a little bit. I wouldn't be surprised if you see him maybe start the year as the number 3 receiver because I think he's just that dynamic. I think Nathaniel Hackett's going to have a boatload of fun trying to score a Tugalicious, as he refers to them, as a grown man refers to him as, with Mecole Hardman. And you know what? Randall Cobb is going to be a backup who gets maybe 200 yards this year. He's just there like a veteran presence. But you know what? Aaron Rodgers has a lot to say. Aaron Rodgers knows Randall Cobb. He trusts Randall Cobb. Randall Cobb knows this offense. Is there an outside shot that he could just lean on that familiarity, and that's what gets Randall Cobb maybe some extra snaps than he would have elsewhere? I would not be surprised one bit. So we know Wilson's going to be the top guy. I'm just really interested to see how the rest of it shakes out.
Yeah, we'll get to a couple of comments here that actually really relate to what you said. One thing that was commented a few minutes ago, but it totally relates to what you just said right now, which is about Corey Davis. It was David Brill on YouTube said, should the Jets have signed DeAndre Hopkins for $12 million and cut Corey Davis, making he's making around $11 million this year? Basically, they would have saved $10.5 million by cutting Corey Davis, essentially getting DeAndre Hopkins if they paid what the Titans paid for about $1.5 million, and in net, if you're looking at it that way. Of course, it was a 2-year deal for Hopkins, but still. I mean, we've talked about this a lot on the show. We don't have to go into grave detail about this, but yeah, I mean, yes, they should have done that. The Jets pretty much immediately ruled it out that they weren't going to do that. Who knows what it was? It could have been a personality fit, a culture fit, whatever it was. Maybe they think he's declining more than he has. It does seem as though some NFL teams weren't as high on DeAndre Hopkins as maybe we were and maybe other people were. But yeah, I've been very vocal about the fact that, and I like Corey Davis as well, by the way. I've also been vocal on the show saying that I think Corey Davis might be the second best wide receiver on this team still. But I think that, yeah, absolutely. Given his contract, yes, the Jets could have had a lot better value in someone like DeAndre Hopkins, but it was never realistic. The Jets ruled it out pretty quickly. I think him going to the Titans is, given that the Jets weren't going to sign him, a best case scenario because he didn't go to the Bills. He didn't go to the Patriots. He didn't go to the Chiefs. He went to a team that is hopefully and likely not going to do a ton of damage in the AFC, and that is the Titans. And then the second thing, which this also relates to Corey Davis, from Brian on YouTube said they still might redo Corey Davis's contract. Absolutely, I wouldn't be surprised at all if they kind of restructure it. Obviously, doing so would potentially add a void year, maybe add push some money into next year, or maybe they do a whole Jamison Crowder thing where they're like, hey, you got to take a pay cut, right? Something like that to stay on the team. They could do both of those. They could go both of those routes. But either way, I agree with you. It's a very interesting situation, like the whole wide receiver room, because they legit have 4, and if you want to include Randall Cobb, 5 legit pretty good wide receivers. Like, I'm not super high on Allen Lazard, but he's a fine player. He's a starting caliber wide receiver. Obviously, Garrett Wilson's a star. It will be really interesting to see how that whole room shapes out. And I wouldn't be surprised at all, like you said, if Mecole Hardman ends up getting a little bit more playing time and a little more snaps than people kind of realize. The position battle that I think is the most interesting to me, the most fascinating, is right tackle. I think that is by far the position battle that I'm paying the most attention to this summer to see how it kind of develops. Obviously, the assumption right now is that Dwayne Brown, if he's healthy, is your starting left tackle. The Jets may, publicly be saying there's a competition, that, Mekhi Becton technically has a shot. If Brown is healthy, he's going to be the left tackle. I'd be pretty stunned if that wasn't the case. And so, you have that at left tackle, which means that Mekhi Becton is probably going to have to compete for a job at right tackle, which he's been very vocal about in the past, including this offseason, that he is not a fan of that. He has tweeted out saying, I am a left tackle. He has partially blamed his injury last season on the fact that he was playing right tackle. And, you can put as much credence, you can lend as much credence to that as you want. You can put as much stock in it as you will. Unfortunately for Becton, it does seem as though he's going to have to compete for the right tackle job. And I don't think he's going to be handed anything. And I wouldn't be surprised. In fact, right now, if I was predicting I would not predict that Mekhi Becton starts week 1. I think that Billy Turner would be winning the right tackle.
Whoa.
That's my prediction.
That's a bold one.
Maybe it is. I don't know. But I think it comes down to a coaching staff thing where, I even, and this is obviously you have to factor in, can Mekhi Becton stay healthy? I really hope he does. He's gotten himself into phenomenal shape this offseason. I'm so pulling for this dude to be good, not only for the Jets' sake, because I think he's the most talented offensive lineman on the team, legitimately. And I've said
in terms of raw, like physicality.
It's just what his ceiling could be. He can be a top 5 left tackle in the NFL. We knew that since he was drafted. I fully believe that. He just he has to stay healthy, right? So in terms of I want him to be good for the Jets' sake, but I want him to be good for his sake because I'm really pulling for the dude because he's had a really rough couple of years. I mean, the guy's had back-to-back season-ending knee injuries. That sucks. It's threatened to derail his entire career. So I'm really pulling for him, but I just don't know if he's going to be the week 1 starting right tackle because I'm not sure how comfortable he's going to be there. I'm not sure how much the Jets coaching staff is going to love him at that spot. And also at the same time, Billy Turner has spent more time with Nathaniel Hackett than anybody else, I believe, in the NFL over the last 4 years because he was with them for 3 years in Green Bay, and then he followed him to Denver. So he's been with him the last 4 years, now make it 5 with the Jets. So there's a lot of experience there. There's a lot of history between Hackett and Turner. Turner's a below average starting tackle. He's a bottom tier starting tackle if he's your starting right tackle. But
that's quite the indictment of Mekhi Becton if a bottom tier right tackle beats him out.
I think it's a situation where the Jets coaching staff, specifically Nathaniel Hackett, might be higher on Billy Turner than they should be because they really like Billy Turner. And I also think they might be lower on Mekhi Becton than they should be because maybe they're not super. I mean, I'm just speculating at this point, but I think that relationship has soured a little bit. I'm really pulling for myself to be wrong. I do not want to see Billy Turner starting week 1 right tackle. I'd rather see Max Mitchell if that was the case, because he's also in that competition. It's going to be a three-man competition on paper between Becton, Billy Turner, and Max Mitchell. It's too early to say now. Honestly, we'll have a better idea in a couple of days. So maybe this is going to age poorly. I mean, if Mekhi Becton is healthy and actually participating in training camp and getting all the first team reps at right tackle, I'm gonna look like an idiot. Well, actually, he's probably be playing left tackle because I'm not sure Dwayne Brown's gonna be ready yet. But either way, I might maybe I'll look like an idiot soon. But I think we'll have a better idea of how that position group is going to shape out in the coming weeks. But it's definitely the most interesting one to me because I think it's super important, one, for the Jets to know who's starting at right tackle, especially with a 40-year-old Dwayne Brown at left tackle who's coming off a major injury. I think it's important, but also it's just super interesting to see what the Jets are going to do with Mekhi Becton. You have a guy like Billy Turner who has the experience and the history with Hackett, and then somebody like a dark horse like Max Mitchell who, hey, he showed some promise as a rookie. I wouldn't be surprised, and I would like to see more of him this season. I think it's just a really fascinating position battle. So that's the one I'm paying most attention to.
I'm really watching the defensive line too. That's going to have my attention the entire time because we have 2 in stone immutable truths about the Jets defensive line this year. Number one, they're going to rotate the hell out of everybody. Robert Saleh wants everybody to eat. He'd rather put in a guy for 30% of snaps than have one guy play 90 and take plays off and have dead legs. Like, that's just what he's going to do. That's what he is. He's never going to bend on that. So get used to it. That's truth number one. Truth number 2, Will McDonald is going to get on the field at some point. They drafted Will McDonald because they think that he is a double-digit sack guy consistently, and they think he's going to be a cornerstone of what they do defensively. Now, the problem, again, is because of drafting McDonald, you also have to give Jermaine Johnson snaps, and you got to give Carl Lawson snaps. To say nothing even of Bryce Huff, what we discussed before. Those 2 are going to dominate. So I wonder where it comes from. Do they just kind of slowly wean off Lawson, and every single week they end up giving McDonald a bigger load? Is Jermaine Johnson, everybody's saying Jermaine Johnson has really come in locked and loaded for training camp, and they all think he's really going to have a breakout year, but I like the guy. I think he'll be good, but, believe it when I see it kind of thing. I hope he does, but I need to see it. It's going to be really interesting to see what they do. Maybe John Franklin Myers moves inside more. Maybe they completely ditch Bryce Huff. Like, there's 10 different directions. There's 10 different universes if we want to do the multiverse Spider-Man branching analogy. There's 10 different ones that I could just see happening right now, depending on how far along Will McDonald is, how they want to use Will McDonald, how Jermaine Johnson comes along. I don't feel like anybody is really going to be able to predict accurately what's going to happen with defensive lines. I don't even think Robert Saleh knows right now.
Yeah, and that's why we have training camp. That's why we have the preseason to hopefully figure that stuff out. I think a lot of it might just come down to like injuries, right? I think if everything is healthy, if every player on that defensive line is healthy, I don't think the defensive line looks super different than it was last year. basically you got Quentin Jefferson replacing that Sheldon Rankins role. You got Al Woods replacing Nathan Shepard. You got Will McDonald replacing Bryce Huff. And then I think everything else is pretty much the same. That's how I would imagine it shakes out if everyone is healthy, which is very unlikely to happen. Injuries that happen. It's the NFL. It's going to be really fascinating to see what they do with Bryce Huff because we talked about it a ton on the show. I love Bryce Huff. I think he's a great player, but I just don't think there's any role for him on the team right now. The Jets will have their asking price for him. They're not going to just give him away. It's going to be the same thing with Mims last year, where I hope that they're not asking for like a second-round pick for Mims because if they're asking or for Huff, because if they're asking for a fourth-round pick for Mims last year, I don't know what they're asking for Huff right now. But I still wouldn't be surprised if he's traded just because I don't see a role for him. But it is going to be really interesting to see how all of that shakes out. I'm looking, I think, because I want to talk about center, right? But I feel like there's not a ton to talk about there. It's going to be Connor McGovern or it's going to be Joe Tippmann, right? Like one of those. Wes Schweitzer he's in the mix technically. He got like some first team reps during OTAs, but he's not starting at center week 1. If he does, Jets fans will be very upset about that.
Spencer Long 2.0 because another Washington guy.
Oh God, no. He's your Dan Feeney replacement. If he's anything other than that, then that's
at least if this guy could snap the ball, he's an improvement over
true
Spencer Long, a center who couldn't snap the ball.
That's
God,
true.
the Jets made me mad back then.
Those were the days, man. But yeah, I don't think there's a ton to discuss there. The Jets obviously want Joe Tippmann to win a job. If he's ready, they're going to start him. I think Connor McGovern is underrated by some Jets fans. Maybe we'll talk about that in a little bit. Maybe, I don't know. But he's graded out as a top 10 center by Pro Football Focus over the last 2 years. Take that for what it's worth. But I think he's a fine player. I think he's a starting caliber center for sure. But they drafted Joe Tippmann to be their long-term starter. They only signed Connor McGovern to a 1-year, $1.9 million contract. They will not hesitate to start Tippmann if they think he's ready. But I don't think that's a super interesting position battle to me. So I want to talk about running back because I think that is a little more interesting to me. And a lot of this obviously changes if they sign Dalvin Cook. If they sign Dalvin Cook, he's probably your RB2, unquestioned behind Breece Hall. I don't think there's really much of a competition there. But assuming they don't sign Cook, which right now it does appear as though the Jets don't want to reach his asking price or whatever. Maybe they come up. Maybe Cook comes down. Maybe they end up signing him. I don't know. Maybe they sign him tomorrow. And again, this looks stupid. But right now, I don't know if they're going to sign him. So let's just assume he's not on the team. That means you got Michael Carter, you got Zonovan Knight, you got Israel Abanikanda. Those are your 3 running backs that are fighting for that running back 2 spot behind Breece Hall, which is a very important spot considering that Breece Hall is still working his way back from a torn ACL. All indications are that he will be ready for week 1. I expect him to be on the field week 1, barring a setback, but he's not going to be given a full workload early on. We know that. He's not going to be, given 20 carries a game. The Jets aren't going to be doing that with him. So whoever is supplementing him, whoever is complementing him in the backfield, whether it's Carter, Knight, Abanikanda, or a mixture of the 3, that's going to be really important. I'd say Carter has the edge right now just because he kind of is the incumbent in that role, but he is coming off a disappointing 2022 season. Knight had his flashes early on when he was first given an opportunity, but he kind of tapered off as well. I'm really excited to see Abanikanda. I think he's a very exciting prospect. I think he could be really good. I'm not sure he's going to be given the opportunity to win that job immediately, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if as the season progresses, he gets more and more snaps and maybe does become RB2. But that kind of like 3-way battle, I'm paying a lot of attention at this summer.
Well, you said I don't think they're going to give Hall a full workload because of the injury. They might not give him a full workload ever. That's just not how Nathaniel Hackett works. Every single stop he's been at, Buffalo, Jacksonville, obviously Green Bay was the most obvious because he had probably the best combination of backs with Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. But Nathaniel Hackett loves his running backs. He's going to split carries. He's going to have a pretty evenly shared workload. I think Aaron Jones is much better than A.J. Dillon. Nathaniel Hackett's, I don't care. You guys are getting the same amount of carries. So this depth race is extremely important with Hall being healthy or not, with Cook coming in or not. So that'll be interesting to watch. I just think that it'll take a lot in training. Even though I'm not a big fan of Carter, it'll take a lot to unseat a guy like Michael Carter, I think, in the RB2 role. So as we move on to our final segment, before that, Justin, you have a little word from our friends at DraftKings, don't you?
That I do. Another word from DraftKings. Hey, Jet Press listeners, have you guys signed up for DraftKings yet? If you're a new user, you can receive $150 in bonus bets instantly after following just 3 steps. Create an account, deposit, and then wager $5 on any sport. Whether your first wager wins or loses, you'll still receive the $150 in bonus bets. All you have to do is use the code FSBETS, that's FSBETS, when you sign up. The best part is using our code FSBETS not only gives you the bonus, but it also supports the podcast. Help us out. If you're considering signing up for DraftKings, definitely use our code FSBETS, that's FSBETS, to maximize your first bets. This offer is available for new customers who are 21 and over and physically present in legally gambling states. Please remember to always gamble responsibly. Check the episode description for the full terms of the offer. That was fun. I enjoyed doing promo.
When you guys go to Apple and give us our 5-star review or Spotify or whatever, put in the comments who had the better ad read. It really doesn't matter what you say in the reviews. It's just to drive us up the Apple charts.
Yeah.
So do that in your review.
That would be kind. That was my first promo read. That was fun. I enjoyed that.
Bringing me back to the college radio days, man, doing stuff like that. So let's get into our big finale for this week. And we're going to talk about players that we have bones to pick with. Guys that we think maybe get a little too much shine, and guys that maybe need to redirect some of that shine over to them. Like when I think overrated, and this is going to sound weird coming off the accolades that he just got last year and his status within the league. And this is not to say he's really a bad player by any stretch, but I remember when the All-Pros came out and I saw CJ Mosley on second team All-Pro, I said for a second, hold on a minute. Now,
I knew exactly where you were going with that.
Because CJ Mosley, I still don't think he's kind of the guy he was in Baltimore, where with the Ravens, I mean, CJ Mosley, you can make a case for like a 3 or 4 year period. He was like one of the 3 best linebackers in football. I mean, he was just hoovering up tackles. He's very good. Let me say that right now. CJ Mosley is a very good starting linebacker. I think that he's maybe lost a little bit of a step, especially in the passing game. I don't think he's quite as fleet of foot as he was before. And again, he's going to be 31 this year, and he had severe injuries in the past. Like, that's not any fault of CJ Mosley. But I think the only reason I'm saying that is because I think the Jets maybe looked at their linebacker room and they said, you know what, let's maybe not use a high draft pick there. Let's maybe not go sign Quan Alexander because we got CJ Mosley and then we brought Quincy Williams back. Now, that's serviceable for what it is. I just hope that the Jets don't look at a CJ Mosley-led linebacker room and some of the depth pieces that they have and say, oh, we'll be fine because Mosley can kind of fill in the gaps. He's really good at a role that you give him now. I just don't think he's like he was with the Ravens where he's in that tier where he can just by himself just take care of a linebacker room and you'd be fine.
I completely agree with you. I was also surprised when he earned those second team All-Pro honors, and I think a lot of it is just reputation based with him. He gets
tackles too, and a lot of people look at tackles.
And he was a good linebacker for a really good defense. That absolutely helps. I mean, the dude made, I believe, a Pro Bowl in his first 5 seasons, like each of his first 5 seasons, which is
4 of the first 5.
First 5. Either way, that's crazy. Like, that's an incredible start to a career. Obviously, he kind of had that rough patch in the middle with the Jets where he had the COVID year, he had the injury. That kind of took its toll. But I think he's definitely turned around his reputation with the Jets. He's the leader of that defense. He is one of the more important players on that defense and probably on the roster. But do I think he's a top 4 linebacker, 5 linebacker in the NFL, like, the All-Pro teams would indicate? No, I don't think he is. So I absolutely agree with you. I think he deserves that title of being a little overrated. Still a good player and very important player, but probably a little overrated. You might know where I'm going with this next one. I've talked about him a lot as I think being overrated. It's Allen Lazard, and this is, again, when we're saying a guy's overrated, that doesn't mean they're bad. That doesn't mean that everything they do is bad, because I think Allen Lazard absolutely has a role in this Jets team. I think he's a quality NFL wide receiver, but the Jets are paying him to be their wide receiver too. And I don't think he's the second best wide receiver on the roster. I'm not even positive he's the third best wide receiver. I think he's around.
That's a little harsh. I don't know about that.
I mean, I think he's around the same tier as Mecole Hardman to me. And honestly, a very similar tier to Corey Davis. I think those, second, third, and fourth Jets receivers are all very similar in terms of caliber to me, in terms of their talent level. I would probably lean towards Corey Davis being wide receiver 2, which probably makes him underrated because I don't think most Jets fans would say that. But I think that Lazard is just, he's a bit overhyped. I don't know if Jets fans know exactly the player they're getting. He had a lot of drop issues in Green Bay, a lot of drop issues. He had 6 drops last year. He had 5 drops in just 10 games in 2020. He has had significant drop issues over the course of his career. He put up less than 800 yards as Green Bay's essentially wide receiver 1 last year with Aaron Rodgers throwing him the ball. He struggles to separate. He struggles with route running. He's a very good physical I mean, jump ball. I guess he could be a jump ball receiver. He's a
And
very
straight line. He's fast.
good straight line speed as well. He's basically almost like if Denzel Mims succeeded in the NFL.
This is what he was supposed to be with Alan Lazard.
Yeah. And honestly, I think Mims could have been even better than Lazard. And I think Lazard could be even better than he is now. I'm just saying what he is currently. And I think he's a streaky, inconsistent player who is a starting caliber wide receiver, but is a low-end wide receiver 2 at best. I'd say he's more of a high-end wide receiver 3. And I think the Jets are kind of paying him and expecting him to be that wide receiver 2. Maybe it's because of Hackett. Maybe it's because of Rodgers, whatever you want to say. I really thought when the Jets signed him that he was going to be that Corey Davis replacement, and he isn't because Davis is still on the roster. But if he is their solidified, definite wide receiver 2, I think it's a weak spot for the Jets. So I don't think that Alan Lazard is a bad player, but I think he's definitely a bit overrated by fans, and it seems like the coaching staff as well.
I think that might be the Jackson Smith and Jigba fan talking because that was your guy.
I wanted him, man. I hope Will McDonald absolutely kills it, and maybe that dude is going to be amazing. I still would have drafted Jackson Smith and Jigba, but hey, man, what do I know? I'm an idiot. I don't know anything.
In terms of a guy who I think is underrated, which is also surprising given kind of what he's done in the NFL and his career as a whole. Like when you look at the Jets and then you look at Dwayne Brown at left tackle, like when you consider that he's 30, like I don't think it's unreasonable to say Dwayne Brown might be a Hall of Famer. I don't know if he's there yet. I think he's very close. It's obviously tough because no one, like I feel like a lot of media voters don't really know how to evaluate offensive line play. So like if one guy gets, a couple Pro Bowl nods in a row, they just keep voting for him because they just assume he's good. But I mean, sometimes guys are just good. Like Joe Thomas was in the Pro Bowl every year because he was amazing. Yeah. Like it's not like that for everybody. But I mean, Dwayne is one of those guys because he wasn't like a big New York market media guy to steal Asante Samuel's thing.
It definitely hurts. He played a lot of his career in Houston. I was going to say
Houston and then Seattle. I know Seattle was good, but I mean that was like post Legion of Boom, so it wasn't really championship contending Seattle. And then I mean he's going to be 38 this year. He's going to turn 38 in August. And the Jets, this is what is really telling to me about Dwayne Brown. They had so much confidence in him. They looked at all the great offensive line prospect or tackle prospects that were going to go in like the first 2 days of the draft. They looked at all the free agents out there and they said, nah, we're keeping Dwayne Brown. Like that should speak to something because even though he was banged up and played hurt last year, I think it'd be hard to look at Dwayne Brown's season and say anything other than, it was pretty good. Which for a guy his age, that's incredibly rare. I know there's always like a Jackie Slater or an Andrew Whitworth who played till they're 40, but there aren't that many 38-year-old tackles playing at a high level out there, and Dwayne Brown is still one of them. And you could tell this team just loves him.
Oh, yeah. I mean, how could you not? The dude tore his rotator cuff before the season started and played through it for basically the entire year.
And it was good.
And he was all right. Yeah, he was fine. He was a starting caliber left tackle. I mean, he played, I believe it was either a report or he said it to reporters. He played at his arm and he had to like tuck his arm in a sling to play, or not a sling. It was like in some
like a brace.
A brace. That's what it was, just for him to play. I mean, so the fact that he was able to play through that, that's why the Jets love him so much. That's why the coaching staff loves him. That's why the players love him, because they respect the hell out of a guy, not only who has been in the NFL for 15 years at this point, but
he was drafted in the 26th overall in the 2008 draft. That was the Matt Ryan draft. That was Matt Ryan, Joe Flacco, Darren McFadden, Vernon Golston for Jets fans, but could have had Dwayne Brown instead of Vernon Golston, man.
You didn't have to go there. But yeah, it's insane. And obviously not only that, but the fact that at his age, he decided to not only play all of last year through his injury when he could have just, he could have just taken his money. Like he was playing on what people thought would be a bad Jets team, right? That was the expectation going into the year, is that they might have been a little bit better, but they weren't going to be contending for the playoffs or not, definitely not for the Super Bowl. That wasn't the expectation. And he could have just taken his money. Instead, he wanted to play through it. And not only that, he's returning this year. He could have retired if he wanted to, but he wants to win. That's what he wants. And Brian in chat said a great thing here. He said, if Dwayne Brown wins the Super Bowl this year, he's going into the Hall of Fame. Maybe. I mean, hell, I'd love to see it. 5
Pro Bowls. He's got 2 All-Pros. And this is going to be, his 16th year in the league? I mean, that's not a resume. That's something.
Either way, I love the optimism. I love the optimism. Hey, when he wins the Super Bowl this year, he's going to the Hall of Fame. I hope he does. I think there's so many underrated Jets players on this Jets team, and it's different degrees of underrated. I think there are players who are underrated by like the national media, right? Every team has those. Every team has your DJ Reed, right? I'm not going to talk about DJ Reed because I think it's almost overstated how underrated he is.
Is it crazy to say Sauce is underrated by the media?
I think he's underrated by NFL Twitter. I think those are the only people that actually do that. It's not in actual like NFL media. It's not.
I don't even know if they're being serious half the time. I think it's just like to be funny.
I think a lot of the time it's just Patrick Surtain or Tariq Woolen fanboys that are just kind of doing it. It's specifically Broncos and Seahawks fans that do that stuff, but I don't think so. But like a guy like DJ Reed, perennially underrated by the national media, but I think Jets fans know exactly how great of a player he is. So I don't want to talk about him. There's a few guys I have. Let's talk about Michael Carter II, because I don't think he gets enough praise, and I think he's just starting to get his flowers this offseason, because people always talk about how great the Jets cornerback duo is of Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed, but they legitimately have they have the best, and I don't want to say they have the best cornerback trio in the NFL if you include Michael Carter II, because he was one of the best slot corners in the NFL last season, and I don't think he gets enough praise for that. He's a very good player. So I have a few guys on my list, and there's a lot of guys in that defense you could say are underrated. Like John Franklin Myers, I think, is another guy who I think even fans underrate how good he is. I know he had that, like, the roughing the passer stuff last year. People are like, oh, whatever. But he's a really good player, and he's super versatile. He's really important to that team. And I know I'm throwing out two guys there, but those are two guys. I'll shout out both of them. John Franklin Myers and Michael Carter II, I think, are two of the most underrated, unheralded players on that Jets defense, because everyone talks about Sauce Gardner, Quinnen Williams, CJ Mosley, DJ Reed, rightfully so. But I think John Franklin Myers and Michael Carter II are kind of the glue guys, like the excellent glue guys that hold everything together.
And with that, I think we can call time on the show. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. As always, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Overcast, wherever it may be that you get your podcast. We are all over the podcast and interwebs on the information superhighway. We are also on YouTube at the Jet Press. That's where all the shorts and all the playbacks of the podcast videos, they are all on YouTube. You can check us out there. Make sure you subscribe and make sure you get notified whenever we go live. Justin, take us home.
Of course, and TikTok. I don't know.
And TikTok at the Jet Press. I would be remiss if I did not say that.
We got to start getting into the habit of saying that too.
Oh yes.
Also, FS bets, DraftKings. You guys got that stuff. It's on the screen. It's in the description of the YouTube. You guys know what to do there. But anyway, thank you all for joining us on the show today. You can follow Mike on Twitter at @ByMikeLuciano. You can follow me on Twitter at Justin T. Freed. Follow Jet Press at the Jet Press. You can download the Jet Press podcast wherever you get your podcast, as Mike just mentioned. Also, check us out on YouTube. Subscribe, hit that notification bell, TikTok, all that stuff. You guys know what to do. We stream live every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern time. I'm just happy that we're going to get to talk training camp and actual football next week.
Yes, training camp is here.
It's a great time. Thank you all for listening to Jet Press Podcast. I've been Justin Freed. That has been Mike Luciano. See you guys next time.
See you folks next week.